Hello, everyone. Week 11, starting to get spooky, double digits. It's getting closer and closer to the NFL and fantasy football playoffs. There is a lot to go over still. It is never over. If you make the right moves, if you're listening to the right people, like us here at RPO, this is how you stay in it. This is the IDP 5 week 11. Let's go. All right, you know how we do this now? Two positive, two negative, and one sleeper. But I'm not going to give the sleeper away right away. You got to watch the rest of the video to get to the good stuff. But the first player I want to talk about positively is my man Nnamdi Madubuike of the Baltimore Ravens. I've been a hater of him this year. I loved him last year, but it's not last year anymore. He has not lived up to the potential that he showed us last season, being one of, if not the best, credible pass rushing threat from the interior defensive line of the Baltimore Ravens. He had an enormous streak of sacks last year, spanning 7 games. This year, since the name change from Justin to Nnamdi, we are not seeing quite literally the same player. Last week, he had arguably the best game of his career against the Cincinnati Bengals. But as good as that is, seeing a young player achieve a career high, I'm still a little wary of it, but it is something that we need to note positively. He had 3 sacks. He had a huge game. He was unguardable. It was one of those games where you're so mad because I guarantee if you're like me, he was probably sitting on your bench, or much, much worse, he could have even been on the waiver wire, depending on how deep your leagues are or if they even require defensive tackles. I'll give you a silver lining here. He achieved 25% of his entire season tackle total in that game. The problem was he didn't have 20 tackles, okay? He's not performing well enough to start, but I do like to see the positivity and the growth throughout this season. I think we're just in a weird year. I think it's not just with the offensive players and how the NFL is going, like a lot of what we are talking about on X, but I think we're seeing it on the defensive side too. I think we're seeing kind of a shift in how the game is played, and we're seeing certain players not hit marks. Madubuike for me is not a guy that I'm going to continue putting in my lineups. I don't think that this game changes my overall outlook this season, but it is worth noting that you can't drop this guy. If he's on your roster, you kind of just got to live with it right now. Maybe he's a good bye week filler for the unfortunate late season bye weeks that we're going to see pop up here soon. And also, I just think he's a good guy to throw in there if you need a little bit of some boom bust plays. With that being said, he's no longer a guy that I would foundationally build a team around in fantasy. You don't often do that with defensive tackles anyway, but there are exceptions. And I believe that last season he was one. But this week proved to us that he is too good to just be sitting out on waivers. And he is a great depth piece. He's still kind of young. The Ravens are always going to have a credible defense while Jim Harbaugh is there. The organization is well run. And players like him and the ability to get to the quarterback like that at such a high rate are rare. Hopefully, this was lighting the fuse that is the bomb of Madubuike. But until I see more, I'm not going to put him in my lineups. But it was a great week, and kudos to him for having it. Second player who I want to speak highly of is the linebacker for the Dallas Cowboys, DeMarvion Overshown. At the beginning of the year, I was super, super pumped that Eric Kendricks was playing good for the Cowboys. I started talking about the Cowboys linebackers of the past, the Sean Lees, the Jalen Smiths, and that brief window where we had Leighton Vander Esch as the top guy there. I think I'm going to change my stance from Eric Kendricks being the linebacker there to Overshown, and it's 100% because he is damn near 10 years younger than the guy. That's an exaggeration, but Overshown is getting his first opportunity to start, and he has absolutely been wonderful. This last week, he had 11 tackles and 2 sacks. The guy was just all over the place. Tackle floors, I've always said, are the foundation for a good IDP team, and he has shown us the ability to have consistent tackles. What really will set you apart from the crowd, though, is if you show us an ability to do something other than tackle. And he has 4 sacks this season. And from an interior linebacker spot or a weak side or however you want to, he's not an edge rusher, okay? He is not going to be the guy that goes after the quarterback on every play. So getting a guy who is not only going to be around in the middle, but can occasionally rush the passer and create a big play, That is a linebacker that you need to invest in heavily. He is a guy that I would try to aggressively go out and get, especially if you're a dynasty manager and you're winning now and you're in a contending window. He is not only a guy that will infuse youth into your linebacker core, but he is somebody that you can put in your lineup and start immediately, and you will see immediate returns. So we are seeing also the return of the dominating Cowboys linebacker. And say what you want about America's team, all right, I can assure you that you won't need sunglasses to see that DeMarvion Overshown is having a heck of a season, and he's beginning what could be a heck of a career. All right, time to get a little bit negative here, guys. The first person I'm going to talk about that's kind of disappointing me here of late, and probably a fan base, Laiatu Latu of the Indianapolis Colts. A lot is being said about the Colts benching their previous first round pick, Anthony Richardson, because it doesn't appear that he can play quarterback at the level necessary to get wins in the NFL. And that's a fair point. But I don't think we are paying enough attention to the fact that this season's number one pick for the Colts, who was the cream of the crop, pick of the litter of all defensive rookies, Laiatu Latu, he's not performing well. And I think we're not talking about it enough. He is the third man in a three-man rotation, so the snap count is always hovering around the same, but it's never as good as Odenigbo or Kwity Paye, but he's always the third guy. And it's okay to be the third guy in a rotation if you're producing, but he's also not producing. There are 4 games, 3 of which were zeros. This fourth game, if you combine it, 1 assist, 1 defended pass. That's a 4-game sample size I just gave you. We have only played 10 games. So 40% of this guy's career has not been good. But like I said, he's a rotational player right now. So dynasty managers, I think we can all take a deep breath here. We don't need to drop him. We don't need to trade him. We need to watch him grow. This league is not college. It is significantly better at every part of the game, whether you're offensive line, defensive line, quarterback, whatever. It is significant from a size and athleticism standpoint and from a schematic standpoint. It is not just, hey, go get the guy. That's not how it works. So I think it's too early to give up on Latu, but we need to understand that he shouldn't be pushed to the side of blame. He's a first round pick. A lot of people had him being the number one edge rusher of this class. I had Dallas Turner, so I'm taking an L there too. But the reality is we're seeing guys like Jared Verse who immediately have popped off for the Rams defense, and it looks like he's played in the NFL for 5 years. And then we're seeing guys like Latu who are getting chances, but is just not doing anything with them. So right now, I'm pretty cold on Latu, but it's too early to give up. So Colts fans, sorry to bring you down even more. I know this has been worst case scenario for a season, but hey, you still have Joe Flacco. The second player I want to talk about probably bums me out the most because I was super high on him. I have been since he's entered the league, especially this coming season because a lot of people were doubting him. I just seem to be on the wrong side of the coin. Derwin James, the safety of the Los Angeles Chargers. I was super pumped when Jim Harbaugh was signed because I felt like there was going to be an old school mentality instilled in this Chargers team that has a very good defensive roster. And because of this defensive roster, this potential old school mentality, and quite frankly, better coaching from Jim Harbaugh, I felt like players of Derwin James' caliber would improve. And while the others, I believe, are producing at a higher clip, Derwin James seems to be kind of just the middle tier safety. Somebody who, quite frankly, you could just pick up off waivers. Derwin James will never be on a waiver wire. You could drop him today, and I guarantee you, if he's not claimed before a free agent auction bid, or if he's not picked up immediately on the waiver run, he will never sit out there for longer than the required time it takes for the managers to pick him up. That's just flat out who he is. But he is not performing like Derwin James of the past. Back in the day, which could be 2 years ago, he was the type of guy that could either sack the quarterback, intercept the ball, force a fumble on a huge hit, and also have 10 tackles in that same game. But right now, we would be lucky to see him achieve 6 or more tackles. And 6 tackles just alone is a good safety, but it's not anything that you're going to carry on your roster if you don't have to. He is quite literally the epitome of the dime a dozen safety right now, and that pains me because I think this guy is a world-class player at this position. I don't know if there's maybe injuries are starting to pile up a little bit with him. He has had a myriad of these type of things in his career. regardless of the reason, we have to pay attention to what's going on in front of us. Derwin James is becoming a potential roster clogger, and we are in the money weeks. This is the most important time of the year. You find out a lot about not only yourself as a fantasy manager, but the players that you've invested stock in with. And Derwin James right now is the type of guy that's he's more pulling you down. He's more of an anchor than he is an engine. And I think that there needs to be maybe a tough conversation with you yourself if you're still keeping him in the lineup. It's okay to bench good players if they're not performing well. It is not okay to continue doing the same thing over and over, right? Isn't that what we all call the definition of insanity? So make sure that you're making the tough decisions. And if you need one to start with, I think Derwin James going to your bench is a good place to start. All right, guys, I might be a little late to the party here, but I'm going to go with a guy who's not only going to be a sleeper this year, but I believe could be a foundational linebacker moving forward. And that is Jack Gibbens of the Tennessee Titans, linebacker. It is impossible to find linebackers after like week 4 because everybody kind of knows what's going on. We've turned over all the couch cushions. We've looked under all the rocks. We've searched everywhere that we can possibly find for any sort of life at this position, especially in high play IDP leagues. Jack Gibbens kind of came out of nowhere because Ernest Jones, for whatever reason, was traded a second time in the same season. And when there's an opportunity that rises, we have to take a look at who is the one not only taking the snaps, but how they're performing in these snaps. Jack Gibbens has 29 tackles and half a sack in 2 games played. I'm going to say it out loud one more time because it sounds insane. 29 tackles. He does not need to be out on the waiver wire. I don't care if this is just a 2 or 3 week wonder. Until I see this regression, he needs to be on a roster. And I'm almost as bold enough to say he needs to immediately go into your starting lineup, regardless of who you have. You're not going to get 15 tackle a game numbers from many people in this league. He is also very, very young. He can be somebody that you potentially build on for the next 5 or 6 years. So if you're a dynasty player, I'm almost shooting offers out there to try to get him. I wouldn't go as far as to say he's worth a first round pick, but he is definitely worth more than just sitting out there and not being talked about. The Titans, as boring as they may be to watch, actually have a very good defense. So not only are you getting a good player in a good defense, but the years that come with him, the years you're going to be able to get out of him are the extra benefit. So Jack Gibbens, one more time. Jack Gibbens, pick him up. Don't let him sit out there any longer. Even if you're taking him so nobody else has him, that is just as effective a strategy as picking him up and starting him. So once again, pick up Jack Gibbens. He's a sleeper of the week, but he will no longer be a sleeper after this week. I honestly probably am giving him credit for being a sleeper right now. A lot of you are probably ahead of me on this. I definitely was a little behind on this, but I promise you I'm not letting it go any further. I put in waiver bids in multiple leagues this week for him. I put free agent auction bid money on him. I am ready to go with him. I'm all in. Chips in the middle. It's week 11. I'm trying to win a Super Bowl here. I'm not going to let somebody else have a pretty player on their roster, especially if I've got a little bit of my money left. So Jack Gibbens, pick him up. Do not wait any longer. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching these videos. My name is Matthew Montgomery. I do all my video content on here at RPO Football's YouTube page. I also do written content for footballguys.com. I have a weekly stock market article as well as some other videos every now and again when they let me out of my cage and go on there. So thanks again for watching this. Follow me again, all socials at MattMontyFF. I'm trying to hit a goal this year, guys. So please, please, please give me a follow. And who knows, you might actually learn something. Or you have one more person you could send those troll tweets to, and I might actually laugh and respond to them. Who knows?